finish the closed session for
Okay.
the rest of the meeting.
We will be here waiting for him.
How are you doing, Brian? Heard Monday night was pretty rough.
And Tuesday morning, don't forget that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They said on the news it wasn't over till wee hours of the morning.
Somehow, yeah. This recording is going to start in 1 minute, so I'm gonna be quiet here.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, Counselor Hill.
I'm still bleary-eyed from my night before last.
The night before last.
Oh yes, we had an epically long council meeting, went till 2:30 in the morning. So still getting myself together.
Somebody looks like they're in a better place. I see an ocean.
I think we're just waiting on one or two more. All right, I think if it's okay with everyone, we'll go ahead and get started with the meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order. Hopefully everyone got the bridge line for the closed session portion of this meeting. I can resend it if anyone else needs it again. Just let me know.
No,
Just
I
send
got
it to, yeah, just send it to me again,
Okay.
Jason, if you would.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I have the motion to enter closed session. So what we're going to do is read the motion to go into closed session. You'll exit the Zoom meeting, and then you'll call the bridge line. We'll complete the closed session over the phone, and then we'll come back to the Zoom meeting. So let me share this real quick. Would anyone be willing to make that motion to go into closed session?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Pursuant to section 2.23712 of the Virginia Code, I hereby move that the Charlottesville City Retirement Commission closes open meeting convened in closed session as authorized Virginia Code section 223711A4, specifically for protection of the privacy of an individual petitioning this commission for public safety retirement, where discussion in an open session would disclose confidential and personal health information not authorized to be discussed in an open meeting.
Anybody's second?
I'll second it.
All right. And Allison, do we have to go one by one, or can we just vote on it?
If you can record who's voted, then you can just go all together, say aye if you can see everyone and record it. And I may need you to send me the phone number because I'm not
Okay.
sure that I have that.
I just sent it to you again.
Okay, great.
If
Thank
I
you.
think I forgot earlier.
Okay.
All right. Is there everyone in favor of going into closed session? Say aye.
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 Any
Yes.
opposed? Okay. All right, so you can exit the Zoom meeting and dial into the bridge line.
This meeting will stay open and you'll return here after the closed session.
This is Scott. Can the host of the meeting enable my video, please? Unless you just don't want to see me.
I think he turned you off when you were in the conference call.
It's all right. David, your background is killer.
I know, I like that.
Good morning, Jason and everybody.
Hey,
Morning.
Bill. All right, did we get everybody?
Hello.
Hey, so Bill, we just have a quick vote out of our closed session, and then we'll move on to your item here shortly.
Okay.
I have. Okay, so I just shared the certification to exit the closed session. So we'll do this and then we'll take a vote. Would anyone be willing to move us out of closed session?
Sure. I move this commission certified by recorded vote to the best of each commission member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, who was that?
I was one, Scott.
All right.
Sounded like you had a third too.
All in favor of exiting closed session, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. All right, would anyone be willing to regarding the disability claim?
Is there language? Sorry.
I guess it's for you to approve it. Is that right, Allison?
Yeah, I think you just make an affirmative vote to approve the disability claim presented in the closed session.
I move to approve the disability claim presented in the closed session.
I second. This is Michelle.
You probably need to do a roll call vote for this one, right, Allison?
Yeah, I think that I think it's probably best in this meeting to do a roll call.
All right, so we'll do a roll call. You just let us know if you're yes or no. David Hughes,
Yes.
Heather Hill,
Yes.
David Swanson.
Abstain on grounds of ignorance and multitasking.
Okay. Chris Cullinan,
Yes.
Markel,
Yes.
Scott Hendricks,
No.
Dr. Richardson,
On the fence, but I'll say yes.
Joe Hatter,
Yes.
Michelle Vineyard,
Yes, approve.
and I vote yes as well. Okay, the motion passes. All right, thank you, Allison.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of your business.
Thanks, Allison.
Have a good day.
All right, so you may remember last month, Bill Dowd and Bill Reed were here from SAGE. They were presenting our 5-year experience study results. They've come back with us today. There were several people on the commission that asked for a little more time to review the report, and there may be some additional questions. Just to recap from last time, I think there was a general consensus to accept the recommendations, although there was some discussion about the salary assumptions. And so I think we would ask Bill Dowd if you could just kind of maybe give us a quick recap from last time, since it was a month ago, and let us know if you need to share your screen.
Okay. Yeah, basically, we did the 5-year experience study. We went through all the data the last meeting. And we had made several recommendations for changes in assumptions to be used for the evaluation that's coming up that we'll begin working on now for 2020. A lot of it had to do with retirement rates and termination rates and things like that, which we really didn't have a lot of discussion about. But a couple of things we did get into. One was the salaries, have increased more than we had expected over the 5-year period. And there was some discussion about the fact that there were some one-time increases, but it also seemed like there were some other increases throughout the 5-year period that weren't really part of a one-time adjustment. So we actually sent all of our data to Sarah, the 5 years worth, and she reviewed it. Unfortunately, she's not on the call today, so I don't know if she spoke with you, Jason, or not, but she basically verified that the numbers looked accurate. So again, based on our analysis of the data, we had recommended an increase of 50 basis points, basically, in the future salary increase assumption, and from where it was before. And that's a lot smaller increase than the actual 5-year data indicates, okay? But we felt like we needed to do something. And especially now that she verified the data we used to be accurate, I guess, I don't know what kind of discussion we need to have around that. That was one item. The next item that we had discussion about was the investment return assumption. You're currently assuming 7.5%. We gave you some numbers to show the impact if we lowered that investment return assumption 25 basis points down to 7.25, what that would do to the liability and contributions. We had some discussion around that. I believe you were going to go back and speak with your investment consultant a little bit about what they thought expectations were for the future. The national median, the last survey data we have, is about 7.25%. So you're a little bit higher than median, but not way out of line by any means. So, we kind of left that open for potential further discussion. Those were the two things that I think were a little bit, needed some more thought. Then there were also, we had recommended the amortization of the unfunded liability continue on the same path that you adopted previously, which means that for the pension plan, there were 15 years remaining. So if we changed all these various assumptions, we would have a 15-year amortization period on the remaining unfunded liability, not extend it back further. And the same thing with the OPEB. The OPEB started out at 25 years, it was down to 20. So we recommended reamortization at 20 years, not lengthening it again. So we're creating a new unfunded liability, but the mortgage period is still the same as it was before. We're not extending the payments. So I don't think there was a lot of discussion about that. So I think it was mostly about the salary increases. Again, it's a 50 basis point recommendation to increase. And then whether or not we want to move anything on the long-term assumption on the investment returns.
So I have a question.
Yep.
The amortization. So 5 years from now, do you just then drop it by 5 years and keep going? Or, people refinance all the time. So can you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah, typically, I agree with your comment. People refinance all the time, but if you constantly refinance to a 30-year mortgage, you never pay off your house. Okay, you might get a lower rate, but you always have payments. And the whole purpose here is to try to improve the funded status and get the plan fully funded over a reasonable period of time. So the last time we did an experience study, we adopted a 20-year period to try to get to that 100% funded status, of which there are 5 years remaining. And the same thing with the OPEB. So, technically under the accounting rules and GASB rules, you could amortize up to 30 years. And you could re-amortize every year if you really wanted to. We just don't think that's prudent in terms of paying off the debt and getting the plan better funded. And that affects the contributions that are required by the city. It also affects, over time, the funded status, because more money coming in means the funded status will improve, everything else being equal.
Doesn't the reduced amortization actually decrease the funded percentage and increase what's required?
It doesn't decrease the funded percentage because the liability is measured based on the benefits and the assets, okay? And that's a ratio that gives us a funded percentage. The amortization period really is used to develop the contribution rate, okay? It's whether you have a 15-year mortgage or a 20-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, all right? Again, the commission adopted a 20-year mortgage for the pension 5 years ago. So we went back and after all these changes, we kept it at the same schedule down, which is now down to 15 years. And the contribution rates were a little bit higher, but they weren't enormously higher than the current. So we felt like it would be prudent to stay on the same timeline. But that's, again, that's your decision, not ours.
The contribution rate overall went down. I was surprised and kind of taken. I'm assuming these tables, the contribution rate and the actuarial determined contribution, are these by the city?
Yes, these are city contributions.
So the rate decreased, the OPEB rate decreased a lot. So you clearly did a number of things there. It's not just how you're amortizing this. You changed.
Well, we changed a lot of assumptions on the OPEB, especially, yes, there were significant changes in the OPEB that reduced the future liability, correct?
Right. I mean, you dropped things by percentage totals that I was astounded by.
On OPEB.
I think so.
Yeah, pension actually went up across
right.
the board.
You know, but you're dropping rates by 60% on some things. And I mean,
what are you referring to? Where
well, I'm looking at your demographic assumptions. Termination before retirement.
David, can you share the page numbers?
This looks like it's page 13.
Yeah, hang on, I have to find that.
You read this closely.
Okay, so where are you seeing?
Right in the middle of the page.
Oh, yeah. Increased rates for participants over 3 years by approximately 60%. Yeah, I guess the question, if you look at the charts though, let me find the page with the charts on it. Termination rates. Way back in the back of the report.
And down below on that page, double, triple. I mean, are you going from 1 to 2 or are you going from 50 to 100?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is if you actually look at the rates in the very back of the report, you're right, it might be a significant increase, but we might move someone, we might have been assuming that 8% of the people retire or terminate, and now we're assuming 10%, okay? So that's a 25% increase, but it's still not, you see what I'm saying? It's not a huge number in terms of the actual number of people.
Right.
If you go back to page 45 and 46, you can see the termination rates, the current and proposed for various ages. You can see that a lot of ages, the rates are very low. So a 20% increase still doesn't give you a high turnover rate.
I'm not looking at that.
You can bring it up or not.
And there were some interesting.
I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'm trying to figure out why.
I was hearing that too. It's like there were really specific spikes at certain ages.
Right. But those spikes, a lot of times it could be a spike and that spike could represent, a couple of people. We might have expected 3 people when we got 5 people. So when you look at the scale, it looks like it's an enormous spike, but at the end of the day, it's not a lot of person. So like, for example, on slide 40, again, I don't know if you've got this in front of you, but like at age 28, we expected 2 people to leave and we had 5 people leave. So that's an enormous spike, but it's not a large number of people when you think about it in relation to the total group of public safety employees.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like to me on page 45, a lot of the really large increases are very young workers who haven't even vested yet. And so that really doesn't have an impact on the plan because they won't receive a benefit if they terminate that early.
Right. And even if they did, it's a very small benefit as a deferred vested participant if they happen to be vested.
So does terminate mean leave or does it mean being asked to leave?
Well, it means either way, they leave employment and they haven't retired.
Okay. So on page 9, contribution rates, what are these rates a percent of?
Of payroll. That's the payroll. Each pay period, the city makes a contribution based on the covered payroll. And they make a contribution to the retirement trust and the OPEB trust.
So 2018, 37.18, that's the city making a contribution on average of 37%.
Correct.
Okay.
So Bill, when you're talking about the amortization period, I guess I don't understand the difference between being 5 years into a 20-year amortization versus making it a 15-year. It seems like they would be the same. What's the difference between those two?
There really is no difference, Jason. What I was trying to say is that it's like going out and getting, if you're going to, interest rates come down, you had a 30-year mortgage for the last 10 years and you refinance. Question is, do you refinance now back to 30 years or do you now opt for a 20-year mortgage because rates are lower and you still want to pay it off over the same period of time? But at the end of the day, the answer is the same. It's 15 versus 5 off of 20. I mean, that's all.
But keeping with what you just said, the answer to that question could be maybe yes and maybe no. If I'm 50, maybe I want a 15-year mortgage. If I'm 30, maybe I'm okay with a 30-year mortgage. And
oh, absolutely.
This plan is, I guess, in theory, older than all of us.
Right.
It's indefinite.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And that's why there are some plans out there that continually amortize and re-amortize over 30 years because they figure they're going to be around forever, right? The problem is when we went through the big analysis several years ago, did a bunch of studies and introduced employee contributions and everything else, we came up with a target funded status over a period of time. And we're trying to stick with that timeline by continuing to amortize to the same date. And that's why we came up with the recommendation. Again, but you certainly have the ability to go back and say, no, we want to extend it and lower the city's cost. Just got to realize that the crawl back to a better funded status is going to take longer if you do that.
I understand, but is the city rolling in money right now? Jason?
Well, I would say the primary concern of the commission is the funded status of the plan, not necessarily the amount of the contribution the city is making.
But if the amount of the contribution is either increased or decreased and the funded status is not materially impacted, and I don't know that that's the case, but wouldn't you want to decrease your cost if it didn't negatively impact the funded status?
The funded status is not going to change the day you make the change, but it's going to change in the future because you're getting less money. So it's not going to improve nearly as much.
And couldn't you just be kicking the can if you take the savings by reducing the amortization now with the assumption of perhaps lower interest earnings or lower investment earnings, then aren't you just kicking the can to perhaps have a higher contribution next year?
Well, this country is built on kicking the can.
Well, the country's one day, my retirement's another, David.
I think, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong though, aren't we still using 20 years going forward with gains and losses going forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a restart.
We're talking about the initial liability of the plan that existed 5 years ago that we're trying to get rid of over a 20-year period, and now there's 15 years left. The initial liability. Now we've had an experience study, we're making changes to the initial liability. So we've done that, but we still want to keep it on the same amortization schedule. Going forward next year and the year after that and the year after that, we're going to get new gains and losses because we always get them every year. And then those are going to be carried over 20 years and so on. So, I mean, you're still never going to really fund the plan all the way because you're always going to be adding new bases every year. But this is the initial unfunded liability that we're trying to eliminate.
And by the way, I'm arguing exactly the opposite of what I actually believe. Kicking the can sucks.
Well, and again, one of the things obviously we don't control the budget. There are folks on this call that have a lot more to do with that than we do, because we have nothing to do with that. But when we look at the numbers and the incremental cost, it's not out of line with what you've been contributing. And in fact, in a couple of years, you've actually put some excess money into the plan. So we just felt like it was the best recommendation for us to make, realizing that there's room to reduce contributions if you really had a budget crunch and needed to do so, and nobody could throw stones at you saying you were mismanaging the plan. But in the absence of that, I think it's a prudent thing to recommend as a retirement commission. And then also keep all this in mind that we just ended a year where your investor return, I guarantee you, was not 7.5%. Okay, I don't know if you have any preliminary numbers, Jason, but from what we have seen elsewhere, it's probably going to be 1 or 2%. So after we do all this and say all this, quite likely we're going to come up with a little bit higher number when we do this year's valuation, because the assets really haven't returned what we expected. But all that'll fall to FY 22, right? Not 21.
Jason, do we have any preliminary numbers yet?
Yeah, I talked to Greg McNeely this morning. It's going to be somewhere around 3.5% for the fiscal year.
What is the fiscal year?
It ended on June 30th, and the estimated return was around 3.5%.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that'd be the best number I've heard. So hopefully that rings true. Still not good, but it's less worse than everybody else.
I like to be less worse than other people.
Less worst is better.
Are there any other questions on the experience study?
I thought it was pretty interesting.
I still feel pretty strongly that the salary increases that we saw over the last 5-year period were more one-time in nature than a continuing trend. Even after looking at the data and talking to Sarah and Chrissy about it, I think my preference would be to adopt all of the recommendations, but not change the salary growth assumption. But I'd be curious to see what other people think.
Well, this is Scott here. I have the same kind of feeling, but it's just a feeling. I don't have the data to support what the salary increases shake out to be. Is Michelle still on, or Sarah? Either one? No? So.
Yes, I'm here. This is Michelle.
Okay, Michelle. Have you an opinion on the page 47 rates, current rates and proposed rates?
Let's see. And this would be recommended salary increases for upcoming years.
Rates of increase, yeah.
Rates of increase. Okay. I'll just be very frank with you. I don't have enough. I'm not informed enough on this to really give it full support or go the other way. Yeah, I'm not really in a good position to give a recommendation.
But as a commission member, it seems in reality heavier than what I expect to see.
I agree. So what would the impact be? Are Bill and Bill, are you able to just sit there and figure that out, or do you have a motion?
You're on mute, Bill. Bill, you're on mute.
And I said the impact of changing that salary increase, Bill, I know we have it. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was probably less than $10 million on the total liability. It wasn't a huge difference. The other thing you got to keep in mind is the average age of the group is in the 40s. So these higher increases are for young people with lower salaries, okay, with low liabilities, okay. But, you know, again, that's sort of an up to you. Based on the data, we felt like we had to recommend an increase. But if you're gonna say, well, there's no way we're going as high as the proposed, and quite frankly, we're not sure we're going to be as high as the current over the next 5 years or whatever, then I mean, that's your call. It's going to reduce the ultimate numbers a little bit if we stick with the current assumption.
But Jason, I mean, ultimately, who generates those increases? Where does that come from?
City council.
They would be approved by city council or city manager through pay adjustments. You know, if there's a general cost of living increase or a pay adjustment. So, you know, 3 examples that we thought of over the last 5 years, there were some significant increases related to living wage. Now, those aren't very high salaries, but yeah, a lot of those employees are in the defined benefit plan. There were increases related to a one-time, it was like over 4% increase that all employees got. And then there were some significant public safety increases around 9%. There were some market adjustments. So I don't see that happening again in the next 5 years, which is why I'm a little hesitant to change.
And we're in a 0% year right now.
Right.
I would be in favor of not adopting any of those changes at this point. Also keeping in mind that there has been discussion about a compensation study to more holistically look at our compensation philosophies and system as well. And so that may produce some changes that would affect this, you know, down the road, but I would hold off making any changes until we go through that process as well, just to see if any of those changes would then in turn drive some decision points in terms of these assumptions.
And we can make those adjustments. I mean, we're not on we're on timeline, we're doing an experience study, but if we have the output from that compensation study and it does reflect something more clear to us about what's going on in the future, we can make those adjustments at that time. Is that right? There's flexibility to do that. Make just those assumptions, excuse me.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you can make adjustments and you don't have to wait every 5 years to do that. We typically like to, because we don't like to make changes in one assumption when we haven't looked at all the others, because they tend to offset each other depending on which direction they go. But, you know, if you stick with the current rate, and if salaries go up more, you're going to have a little bit of a loss, right? Yeah. And we'll amortize that over 20 years. If we change the rate and it's too high, you're going to have a little bit of a gain, okay? And that helps you going forward. So, you know, we're not wed to one or the other. It's just, you know, we think, again, based on the data, we couldn't come in and say you've been in line, because you haven't. But like you said, it's more about a forecast than it is about the last 5 years. So the other thing that goes along with that too is, you know, the discussion about the discount rate, the long-term rate of return, which has a much bigger impact on all these numbers than this change in salary assumption. I don't know where you're leaning on that.
You mean the 7.25 versus 7.5?
Right.
We probably don't know where we're leaning either.
Yeah, I think, usually September is when Greg McNeely comes and does the annual review. So that would maybe be a discussion that we would have at that point.
Well, again, we usually present the evaluation in October, right? The October commission meeting. We haven't even gotten data yet. So we're going to start our process of reconciling data, going through everything, you know, your asset information, all that stuff. It sounds like you're leaning toward not changing the salary increase assumption, which is fine with us. You know, if you met in September and decided on the discount rate, we certainly could use whatever rate you come up with to do the valuation, because that's a month before we actually present it. But, you know, we'll need to know by then, because then we'll have everything ready to go. We just got to plug in a discount rate and run our valuation. Okay. So if you really need to have more discussion about that, wait till you see what happened at June 30 in terms of final asset numbers, and that's fine with us. I don't think it really puts anything behind schedule. I'd rather have you do a good diligent process in making that decision and just decide today to change it or not change it based on not a lot of additional information versus what we had the last time we spoke.
Well, I like what Chris and Heather said, and I like what Bill just said. I hate to kick the can down the road, David Hughes, but maybe a couple of months doesn't hurt.
Well, I don't disagree with that, Scott, because I mean, right now, I don't even know how there is a market. I mean,
right. So there's some mystery there, right?
Everything should be going to hell in a handbasket. And I think the likelihood that it will is higher than the likelihood that it won't, at least in the short term and for a period of time. So, you know, when you're looking at assumed rates of return, I don't even know how you do that now.
Yeah, good point.
You look back at long-term history and assume that our economy is not going to collapse forever, and you try to make a reasonable recommendation on that.
I agree, but you know, this period is so unique that I don't think long-term lookbacks are particularly helpful. Normally, I would think that that's exactly correct. You know, that's what you do. And I don't think our economy is going to disappear, but I mean, well.
Right. If you know the answer to where this is headed, everybody wants to know. That's the problem.
Jason, do you want us to get to a point where we're ready to adopt this or?
I don't know if someone has a motion that they would like to make. Chris, I don't know if you'd be willing to make a motion in regards to kind of where you were thinking.
Along with a discount rate?
Yeah, are we talking about the whole thing or parts of it?
Just as a non-voting member of the call, I would think perhaps you could vote on everything but the discount rate, because I'm not sure we're going to get any new data for anything else. And that way, the next meeting, we don't have to go back through everything again. But that's your call.
Yeah, I would echo what Bill said, possibly with the exception that we also tabled the salary adjustment rate.
Is it tabling it or just kind of staying with where we are? Is that the discussion?
Well, that's where I would be. Keep it where we are.
Okay.
And that's what I heard.
Yeah, I don't know that tabling. Yeah, I think that's it too. Yeah, I agree. So Jason, you want Chris to take a stab?
Yeah, steer us, Jason. Help us out.
This is not where my motions are going to be strong. Like I can read motion.
Yeah. Do we have a good summary somewhere in the presentation of the specific points? So just refer to that.
Well, without all the numbers, there's a summary of recommendations on slide. Let's see which one it is. 4, but it really doesn't give you the details of all the changes.
What if the motion was to adopt the recommendations as presented in the Sageview experience study, with the exception of maintaining the current salary increase assumptions and deferring a decision on the assumed rate of return until FY20 numbers are known?
That's it.
Well done.
Did I hear a first and a second?
Well,
I heard double seconds, but Scott and I both seconded.
Okay.
And on that motion? All right, all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bills.
Okay, thank you. Good
guys.
discussion. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
All right, so the next item, hopefully we can move through real quickly, would be the adoption of the May 27th and June 24th minutes. I think they were sent out. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Chris. Any discussion? Didn't miss anything? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from the prior two meetings?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Yes, I'm
opposed?
gonna abstain because I wasn't here in the last months.
Okay. Okay. Great. And then the last thing that was on the agenda, just a quick update on investment performance and hopefully kicking off our discussion on sustainable investing again. So I mentioned earlier, I talked to Greg this morning. At the end of May, our return was approaching just under 2%, and we picked up a little more in June. So he's expecting our fiscal year return to be around 3.5%, which is not horrible, all things considered, but it is short of the 7.5% assumed rate of return. So even though we had a positive return, that is going to be, have a negative impact on the funded status. Well, in the contribution rate. But we should get something this week. Some of the managers, you may remember, only report quarterly around agriculture and real estate. So it takes them a little bit longer to come up with evaluations. So we just sort of have to estimate where they're going to be. But it'll be somewhere in that ballpark of 3.5%.
What was the return the prior fiscal year?
Oh,
Like 11, wasn't it?
I'd have to look it up. I don't remember.
You think it was 11?
It was pretty good though. So I mean, they do all balance out.
Right.
Okay, so I think what I was hoping to ask for regarding sustainable investing would be, I was looking back at my notes, February 26th was the last official action in that regard. We had a meeting that day and the commission discussed a report from the subcommittee that we had formed and was looking for some more specific information from our fund managers on if we made a decision to either take on a new approach or make some sort of divestment action in any of the regards on the topics that we were talking about, how would they specifically enact that? And what specifically would it, what impacts would it specifically have on their approach and returns and that sort of thing? And that same day, I had a brief conversation with Cornerstone. If you remember, Cornerstone is our large cap value manager, and they had several of the names in the sectors that we were talking about related to energy and defense, weapons manufacturers, that sort of thing. And so they would be one of the managers that had direct holdings that might be affected if we make a change. And so they did send me some specific information with some comparables on another client that they have. They didn't tell me who the client was, but they sent some information from another client who has had restrictions on their portfolio for a long time, just to show how their performance deviated from the benchmark, how it deviated from the rest of the clients that are in their traditional portfolio. And pretty much right after we got that, everything was shut down and we weren't able to meet again. So I would like to be able to review that information with the subcommittee. And so if it's okay with the rest of the commission to sort of kick off that subcommittee again. There are a lot of issues that need to be sorted through in regards to if we made a change, what areas are we talking about? Are we talking about the entire portfolio? Are we talking about just active managers? Are we talking about trying to change our passive strategy? So a lot of this, I had a hard time remembering exactly where we were. But we do have notes on every meeting and every action that we've taken so far. So I'd like to get the subcommittee going again so that we can sort of regroup, figure out where we are, and bring back some recommendations at the next meeting, if that sounds okay.
I'm fine with that. I just want to, this is my council hat on. We do need to try to like one meeting per month is what council right now has committed for each group, whether that's a subcommittee meeting or a regular meeting. So I guess my question is, number one, the Retirement Commission was among those that was allowed to have meetings, and that's been approved for August. But do we have to have a full Retirement Commission meeting in August, or can that subcommittee meeting kind of take that place and then we resume in September? Now, we are talking with the communications office. I think we're going to have more resources to help support these because we recognize that this is not going away. But we really, with all of our boards and commissions, we just really need to prioritize how we are scheduling these things, and not kind of, it's not business as usual still in this regard because of the amount of public notice we have to provide and then having them support these meetings. So I'm sorry, I know this is just really more of a logistical thing, but with my council hat on, because we have committed to that as of even Monday night, Tuesday morning. I just want to make sure that I'm sharing that with those boards and commissions in which I participate. So I'd be fine with us having a subcommittee meeting in August because council has given that approval for this commission to have another August meeting. And then we have another regular meeting of this group to reconvene as a whole in September.
I'd be fine with that. Jason, will you have numbers from Dahab or when do you get those?
We should get them this week.
Are you going to send
I mean, not the full report, but we'll at least have numbers this week.
Yeah.
When
does the full report? It's quarterly, right?
Yeah, it would be next month we would get the full report, but we'll have the full return numbers by the end of this month, I think. Yeah.
Jason, could you send us prior to any meeting that information that you talked about receiving immediately prior to things shutting down so that we don't have to just read it during the meeting? And Heather, would it be possible for the subcommittee to meet and then the rest of the committee to join in after 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever and sort of pretend it's one meeting?
I mean, I think it's all done under the Retirement Commission meeting. So whether it's a subgroup or a full group, that's fine. It definitely just needs to, we don't want to be scheduling in a maximum of a 2-hour window, I would say. Multiple meetings where we have to coordinate with many people who get involved in helping us to make sure these are public. So that's fine. That's definitely a good suggestion. I don't know why I can't hear you, Jason. Your microphone looks like it's on, but yeah, you're quiet.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Weird.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that would be on the agenda. So, I mean, we can pretty much spend the whole time talking about, this item. You may remember we're a public body now. So even if the subcommittee was meeting, it would have to be a public meeting like this. There really wouldn't be any difference in how we meet. And so I think holding that same time slot that we have now for the next meeting would be a good way to do that, just to make sure that, everything is transparent. We're not scheduling, a meeting at a different time, to Heather's point. So yeah, I think that would work.
I apologize. What time slot is that?
The fourth Wednesday at 8:30.
It's our regular recurring meeting time.
Yeah, the 26th.
26th of August at 8:30 a.m.
Yeah. So I can gather all of the information that I have and that I got from Cornerstone and kind of recap where we were in this conversation and send that out.
Great. Yeah, definitely send it out whenever it's available.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Wait, David's saying something.
What was that?
Mr. Hughes.
Chrissy and David, how they do those backgrounds.
Magic.
It's nothing fake. I'm at the beach.
He's really at the beach.
Are you really?
I just made mine.
You see where it says stop video at the bottom? And there's a little up arrow next to it.
You can create virtual backgrounds.
Oh.
It's different on everybody's system. I can't do tech support, but if you can find where you choose virtual background, you choose a virtual background.
I see.
While we're here, I just want to thank staff for all your continued work, especially in these very unprecedented times. And it's challenging. I miss seeing people in person. This is, I guess, okay option to I can actually see your faces, but do look forward to a time when we can convene together in person so I can look you in the eye.
Yeah, it's good seeing everybody. Good meeting. So how is this meeting made public? Is there some sort of link that Brian publishes?
Yeah, so many of them are streamed so that people can go in and actually see them as they're happening on our social media pages. So it's actually become more public for people since we've kind of gone this way because it's just so easy for people to participate. And in addition, obviously they're being captured and so people can watch them after the fact as well.
Cool.
So.
I'm back on. Can you hear me?
Yeah. If you can want to explain any more of that, Brian. Yeah.
For this meeting, I didn't think it was necessarily must-see TV.
Sure.
So we didn't stream it to Facebook and Twitter. It is being streamed on Boxcast, and so it is on the city's website, charlottesville.gov/streaming. People could look at other boards and commissions and find the video. But this also allows us to get a recording, which keeps the city attorney's office happy to make sure we have all your motions going in and out of closed session and all that captured. And
I agree. I don't think that we're must-see TV here. That's why I thought I said some of them, but I didn't think that we were on Facebook this morning.
If you want Facebook, I can turn it on.
No, get enough of that.
Thanks for your efforts, Brian.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
Good seeing everybody.
Yes, thank you. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Higher than I would have expected, I should say.
In favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Bye, everybody.
See you.